Hello, friend. My name is Kayla, and you're listening to Climate Action Figures.
Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 5 of Climate Action Figures. My name is John Whidden, and this week on the show, you get to meet our creative consultant, Kayla. But before we meet Kayla, this week's Quick Fix. And today's Quick Fix comes to you from Grant from Calgary, who says, share equipment. Lawnmowers, carpet cleaners, chainsaws, everything like that. Why does everyone need to have and own one of everything? No kidding, Grant. That's a great one. Well, welcome, Kayla, to episode 5. Great to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Tell me what you think about the Quick Fix from Grant today.
I thought that one was brilliant. I never thought of that before. That's such a good tip, especially as someone. I live in a very small house with very little storage space. So I don't have room to store all of these equipment that would be really useful for cleaning and things that you maybe would use like a couple times throughout the year, if anything. I think that is so brilliant. I will absolutely, hopefully be using that in my life. I can't believe I didn't think of that before.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We tend to think we have to have one of everything, and you go down a block of houses and you probably find the same thing. Everybody has their snow blower, their leaf blower, their lawnmower, or whatever. So great.
Yeah, and you would only use it like a couple times here and there, so why not share with people?
We should probably tell everybody how we met. Do you want to start that, or shall I?
Oh, okay. I'll start. So we have known each other for many years. I don't think I remember the very first moment that we met, but I've just known you for years and years through church. And your wife, Colleen, does a lot of like musical theater productions.
She does.
And she hosted one in our church. And that was the first show I've ever been in. And for context now, I really love theater. I try and do it when I can. But that was the first show I was ever in. And that's kind of where I got to know you guys better. And
our daughters are the same age as you and your sister. So,
yes.
And on from there. And we just were on a backcountry, cross-country ski trip into an Alpine Club of Canada hut at Elk Lakes. We went in with 10, 11 people. And when it came time for...
trip.
Yeah, exactly. For this podcast, I thought, I'm in my 50s. Let's not get too specific there. But I thought, this podcast is geared at youth. So I need to have a youth help me with, hey, John, no, don't do that. Or you definitely need to do that. So Kayla's been wonderful to help at the podcast with the things we need to do, especially around social media. How are we doing? Are we okay, Kayla, with our social media?
I really like the white wolf. That is probably my
favorite. Oh, do you? Okay.
Thing that's come out of. Yes, I love the white wolf.
Oh, good.
She's vicious. I'm terrified of her, but I'm very happy to see her every time I do.
Yes, vicious indeed.
Yeah.
So you came on to the podcast as creative consultant. You agreed to do that. Tell us what you think about your role as creative consultant. How do you see how you help us on the podcast here?
Oh, I was honored. I mean, I love giving advice even when people don't ask it from me. All of my friends, I will always love to give advice. So somebody who actually wants my advice in an official capacity with a title attached to it, that I couldn't have asked for more. So I feel very honored that you care about what some of my opinions are. And not to say that like I know everything about all young people and that I can give like amazingly qualified advice. I don't know if I should out myself. I don't even have TikTok. So there's probably a lot more qualified young people that are a lot more well-versed in social media. So I feel very lucky that I get to put in my 2 cents here and there, and I get to be a part of this podcast, which I think is a really great initiative, and it's lots of fun.
Well, I'm glad you've enjoyed that, and you certainly have been helpful in terms of, when I say, how do I message someone on Instagram exactly? You're like, okay, I'll show you.
That I can answer.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I do. So I hope that the podcast itself grows and reaches more and more people. That would be amazing. I think that I'm going to learn a lot along with the podcast. Like I said, like this, I haven't been a creative consultant before. I don't have like a ton of official experience in that capacity. So I can see myself getting a lot of experience and growing alongside of it, which I'm really excited about. And that's kind of like a major benefit for me. And I also see, I don't know, I would love to see how the podcast develops in the long term and how it kind of changes shape and direction. And it feels really cool to be able to be a part of that and kind of help in shaping it. Especially like there's a lot of projects that you can join in when things are already very well established. But it's really interesting to start on a project from the very inception and then go through that whole growth process along with it. So I think that, again, is something that I'm really excited for and I'm really interested in.
Now, part of the reason I asked you to be a creative consultant, Kayla, is because you're working on your own podcast right now, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You want to tell us a bit about that and the name of it and all that?
Yeah, sure. So it's called Nothing's Hotter Than a Globetrotter. And it's still in development at the moment. But for me, probably my greatest passion in life is storytelling. Just getting to hear people's true stories from their own personal experiences. And I also love travel. So I've kind of mashed up those two passions, and I get a guest on and I just get them to tell me a travel story that they have from different geographical locations, different types of stories, different people, all walks of life. So yeah, it's been really fun. I'll let you know when that comes out because I'm still working on it.
We'll definitely share more on this podcast about that when it comes out because stories are so powerful. It's wonderful. So back to creative consultant and moving forward, do you see your role as creative consultant developing or changing, or have you got some ideas about that? Are you eventually going to, kick me out of the chair and take over the podcast or what?
I mean, world domination is really tempting. That sounds really lovely. I think
it's our goal. Let's be frank. That is our goal. But hold on, if we're both going for world domination, I think I did that on one of the social media things. I twirled the mustache and said, first this and then the world. But if we're both going for world domination and there's two of us, then what happens with that? Who wins?
Fight to the death, maybe?
Ooh, this sounds intriguing. That would be pretty fun. I think this...
I know, but you look better as like an evil supervillain than I do. I don't have the fancy mustache.
Well, you could grow one.
I do want to tell the story of the mustache to everyone.
Oh, okay.
So, yes. So you asked me, I remember when we were first talking about this podcast, I hadn't seen you in a long time and you joined the video call and you have this glorious mustache that is like akin to the ones of supervillains. And I thought, that's perfect. That is perfect for this podcast. Everyone's going to recognize you from that. And so you've asked me about getting rid of it. And that is one of the stances as creative consultant I've been pretty firm on. The mustache, well, I think, has to stay. It's
funny.
Wonderful.
It's funny you bring that in because Colleen, my wife, who you've mentioned, does musical theater. She directed many, many shows. She directed Little Women, and I was in it, and I was the villain in one of Joe's stories. So I had to grow this evil mustache. So after the show was over, she assumed the mustache would disappear. But that's when I said, Kayla and I were talking, and I said to you, do I shave the mustache off now? Because I'm in a few of the social media posts already with it. And you said, no, it can be your trademark. And then Colleen, not so pleased about that decision, let me tell you. But there's a funny story about that. I was far from home just the other day, and a fellow walked up to me and said, hey, are you the guy from Climate Action Figures? And I'm like, what? Oh, yes, but how the heck did you know that? I was thinking if I got a ball cap on, is that we don't have any swag yet. We should get some swag, shouldn't we? I said, how did you know? And he said, the mustache. So he'd picked that up on Instagram. And we had a little conversation, actually. His name's Curtis, and he works, I don't know how much Curtis wants me to share, but he works in an outdoor field in Saskatchewan. And he turns out, I looked at his Instagram page, and there's so many great photos and videos. And one is a bear encounter that he had and he nails it. I love bears, and I love reading about bears. And from all I've experienced and read about bears, the way he deals with this bear is beautiful. So, you know what? I should put that in the show notes, shouldn't I? Is that what I can do? Did I say that right, Kayla?
Oh, yeah.
I'll put that in the show notes, and you can look at that video or whatever you like from Curtis's Instagram. But that's what connected us originally, and then he had picked this up from one of the social media posts, and so the mustache is famous apparently. So I guess I can't get rid of it.
I know, that's our brand now. Eventually, maybe we can do like a fundraiser for a climate change organization to shave off your mustache.
Well, there you go. That sounds great.
People donate enough money and you can shave it off.
Or if they donate enough money, you'll grow one just like this. That'll be part of the world.
I've been trying. I've been trying for 24 years.
It'll be part of the world domination. We each have our own evil mustache. Okay, enough about the mustache.
That would be fun.
Shall we move on?
Yes.
You know, one of the features we have on the show is engineer's verdict. And we got another engineer's verdict in based on one of the previous engineer's verdict. If you remember back to an earlier episode, there was a question about if I can convince my dad to ride his bike to work instead of driving the van. Can I tell him how much money that would save or how much carbon that would save? And our engineer, Jeff, did a wonderful job of explaining all that. Then Glenda from Edson wrote in and said, love the engineer's verdict. I'm curious how long it took Jeff to figure out the answer to that question. And then she said, looking forward to hearing your guests and their ideas. So thanks a lot, Glenda, for that. And then Jeff gave us his answer. So let's turn it over to Jeff and see what he had to say about how long it took him to come up with that answer.
Well, I think it took me about 15 or 20 minutes, but most of that time was spent trying to find out what the actual fuel consumption ratings were for that particular vehicle. So I just spent a little bit more time tracking down the metric numbers or liters per 100 kilometers. And then once I had that, a quick visit to Gas Buddy, that website that reports gasoline prices, and then a little bit of simple math. Then another couple of minutes to figure out how Environment Canada's greenhouse gas calculator worked. So it really wasn't very hard or very time-consuming, the kind of thing an engineer does for fun, actually, while waiting for their morning coffee to brew. Actually, now that I think of that, my wife says if this is the kind of thing an engineer does for fun, maybe I should get out a little more.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Jeff, for that. We appreciate the time Jeff invests to answer your questions. So keep those questions coming in at climateactionfigures@gmail.com or any of our other social media. And as always, listener, if you know someone who should appear on this show, please tell us and we'll contact them and try to get them on as a guest on the show. Now, back to today's guest, Kayla. We should probably get to your climate action eventually, since that's what the whole thing's about. So what is your climate action?
So I'm actually curious to know, what is the difference between the quick fix and the climate action?
That's a great question, Kayla. And I've thought about that a lot. And if our creative consultant is asking, then probably you may be thinking the same thing, dear listener. So the quick fix originally was supposed to be something quick and easy that you could do, any of us could do, to help the environment, basically. So maybe not use a plastic straw at a restaurant. Actually, spoiler alert, that's somebody's that they sent in, so I'm going to use that in a future episode. But that's a little example of a quick fix. Actually, let's just say that was Linda from California, all the way from California. Linda sent that one in. So the climate action is something more that you are focusing on, that you do in your life, that is meant to mitigate climate change. So, whether those get mixed up a little, they invariably will, but let's go with that as our definition. And let's give you the opportunity, because I didn't earlier, to give us your quick fix and your climate action. There, put you on the spot. Do you have one of each of those for us?
Okay. Yes. All right. So with that definition you just gave me, I would say that my quick fix is probably turning off the water in the shower when I put in my shampoo and then turning it back on to rinse it all out, just to save a bit of water. Even in the winter, I will be very cold,
Wow.
but I will still turn it off to put shampoo in.
Impressive.
Yeah, I'm used to it now. It was tough when I started, but I'm used to it now.
And if you're not watching this, watching this on YouTube, we can see on the YouTube feed that Kayla has quite a lot of hair, so she could get pretty cold while she's waiting. But That's your commitment. Nice job.
I've tried. I've been doing it for like 5 years, maybe. Anyway, so that would be my quick fix. My climate action for a more larger scale initiative that I try and continuously do is I try and talk to people about it in general, like anyone who wants to have a conversation about climate change, because I think that can be a really big driver of change, is just more people talking about it and getting it out in conversation more and seeing if other people are feeling the same way you are, sharing ideas, sharing knowledge. I think that can actually make a really big impact. I hope it does.
I think you're absolutely
I'm sure
right.
As you can tell, I love talking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right on that. It just breaks down some of the barriers about it being a thing. And it's like, no, we're going to talk about it. And that's kind of what we do on the show here too. But my question for you about that, Kayla, is how do you start those conversations? You don't walk up to someone in the street generally and say, hey, do you want to talk about climate change?
No. And I don't usually talk to strangers about it. It's usually people that I'm close to, like family and friends.
Right.
Oftentimes it will like kind of come up in conversation, or sometimes I see someone doing things that I think aren't really great for the environment. But what I found really interesting, like recently I've been looking into the difference between calling out versus calling in. So I try not to call someone out on it and make them feel shame about things that they're doing that, if I notice that they don't recycle at all, I don't want them to feel shameful about not recycling. I more so try and frame it as in like, hey, like, do you have a place I could recycle this? If they say no, I go, oh, like, how come? Rather than saying, you don't have a place to recycle, you're killing the planet, how dare you? And I think that will do a lot. We don't want people to get defensive and upset and feel this shame about things that they just might not know, things that they might genuinely not have access to. And it's important to not make those assumptions that people are doing these actions that would be harming the climate on purpose, more so out of potential barriers that they wouldn't be able to. So I think I always try and keep that in mind when I talk to people about issues surrounding climate change.
That's wonderful. Calling people in instead of calling people out. I love it. Kayla, as we wrap up today, what gives you hope?
Gives me hope? That's a great question. And I think I'll relate it back to my climate action. It's when I do have conversations with people and either I feel like I've been able to give them something potential new, like if it's information or knowledge, that makes me feel really good. If I ask them like, oh, why don't you compost? And they say, I didn't know that you could, like, I don't really know how it works. And I can kind of like teach them about the green bins that we're very lucky to have in Calgary and things like that, right? That makes me feel really good. But also more so than that, when I have conversations with people, I get a sense of camaraderie if people are feeling the same way. This whole show is about climate anxiety, right? And I feel very connected to that because I have had climate anxiety. It has stressed me out some days, right? It's a sense of real anxiety. So to know that I'm not the only one who feels this, I'm not the only person who cares. There are other people who genuinely care about this issue. It makes me feel that there's hope that people care enough, then they're going to vote in those directions, and they're going to use those passions and the things that we're all stressed about, and we're going to turn that into something positive. So it feels nice that I'm not alone.
Well, thanks so much, Kayla, for sharing those personal reflections. Appreciate that very much. And I really appreciate that you were willing to join us on the show today so that we could understand who you are and how you contribute the youthful brain side of this podcast. So thanks a lot for being here.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me. It's been very lovely, and I do love to talk. So thank you. You've given me a platform to talk, which I love doing. So thank you very much.
Excellent. I'm glad we could do that for you. And listener, thank you very much for joining us this week. And we'll look forward to bringing you another climate action figure next week. Until then, go figures.
Do I say something? Go figures.
Yeah, we could.
Okay. Nice. Go figures.
Where the real brains of the youth in this show lie.
I don't know if we want to make that claim. The real brains of the youth. I don't know.
The real
if
brains.
that's
No, let me
me,
say
but
the
thanks.
real brain. Actually, I should go back and do that again.
I'm not that smart.
That's a good outtake. That's a good outtake.
This has been Climate Action Figures. Our show is produced and hosted by John Whidden. Our creative consultant is Kayla McIntosh. Our theme song is Hawaii Vacation by Tovari. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Climate Action Figures. That's all one word. And if you have any other questions or comments that arose from this or any episode, feel free to reach out to us at climateactionfigures@gmail.com. And thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another Climate Action Figure.